Welcome to Heartbreak Chronicles. Everything used to be so regular in William's life. Each day follows the same rhythm of work, family, and little pleasures like golfing on Sundays. But that night, the moment he walked through the door of his home, the familiar comfort suddenly disappeared, as if the air had grown heavy with some unspoken tension. Sophia sits at the table, a bottle of red wine already open, two glasses neatly placed. The scene was unusual. Sophia rarely drank without a special occasion. At the moment, she was gripping the stem of her wine glass with both hands, and although her face was calm, her eyes revealed a dark storm within. "Hey!" William forced a smile and set his keys down on the kitchen counter. "Is this some kind of celebration?" The corners of Sophia's mouth rose slightly, but failed to reach her eyes. "Sit down, William. We need to talk." It wasn't the words themselves that sent chills down his spine. It was the tone in which she said them, calculated, as if she'd rehearsed them a million times. William felt his heart race, a sense of foreboding tightening in his chest. He pulled out his chair and sat down, reaching for the glass of wine she'd poured for him. "Sophia, what's going on?" he asked, keeping his voice steady, but the worst possibilities were already starting to flash through his mind. Sophia took a sip of her wine, her gaze drifting briefly before falling back on him. "William, I've been thinking lately," she spoke, her tone cautious and restrained, "about us, about our marriage." William put down his glass and leaned forward slightly. "What do you mean? Is something wrong?" She hesitated, and in that brief pause, William saw that the woman he had spent over 20 years with was struggling to say certain things. When she finally spoke, each word pierced his heart like a sharp blade. "I feel like I've lost myself," she admitted. "I've been your wife and the mother of our children, but in the process I've forgotten who I really am." William blinked, caught completely off guard. "Sophia, what do you mean by that? When we've made a good life together?" Her grip on the glass tightened. "I mean, I need to find myself again and figure out what I want and who I am." William felt his stomach getting heavy. "You don't think you can do that with me?" Sophia averted her eyes. "I need space, William. I need to explore outside the boundaries of our marriage." Her words sank slowly into his mind, and when he finally understood them fully, the whole world seemed to tilt. "You mean you want to see the others?" His voice was almost inaudible. Sophia nodded, unshed tears glistening in her eyes. "Yes, just for a while, so I can figure out what I need." The silence that ensued was suffocating. William stared at her, his thoughts tumbling through disbelief, anger, and hurt. He didn't say much after that, just excused himself and left to go upstairs, his feet heavy on the polished wooden floor. In his bedroom, he stood in front of the mirror, in which his reflection seemed to be a pale and troubled version of himself. The man looking back at him seemed to age all at once, as if he had gone through years in a matter of minutes. As he mechanically changed into his sweatshirt, an idea suddenly flashed. He took out his cell phone, opened the voice recording app, hit record, and then carefully slid the phone into his pocket. When he returned to the restaurant, Sophia was still waiting, her glass nearly at the bottom. She spoke again, her words filled with rehearsed caution, detailing her plans to meet with someone, claiming it was only for dinner. But William knew in his heart of hearts that the emotional distance between them had been widening over the months, and now the chasm seemed unbridgeable. "I made an appointment for this Friday," Sophia said, her voice softening to an almost pleading tone. "I'll be back Saturday morning, and then we can talk it over." William stood up abruptly, his chair scraping harshly on the floor. "I think I need to get some air," he said, his tone flat. Without waiting for her to respond, he grabbed his car keys and left, the door closing softly behind him as if to signal some sort of finality. He drove aimlessly, the city lights becoming hazy in a blur of tears. Finally, he pulled into the parking lot of a 24-hour restaurant, the neon sign buzzing faintly in the stillness of the night. At the restaurant, he ordered a cup of coffee, though there was no intention of drinking it at all. He played the recording of Sophia's confession twice, each word stinging him more deeply than the last. When he couldn't take it anymore, he took out his cell phone and dialed Rachel's number. "Daddy," Rachel's pleasant voice contrasted with the storm inside him. "Rachel, I need both you and Ethan online," he said, his voice tight. It's urgent. Rachel's tone changed immediately. What's wrong? Are you okay? Trust me, you all need to hear this. A few moments later, all three were connected. William hesitates for only a second before pressing play, allowing Sophia's voice to fill in the blanks, laying bare her plans to seek opportunities outside of her marriage. When the recording ended, the silence at the other end of the line was suffocating. Rachel was the first to speak up, her voice shaking with anger. This is ridiculous. She's trying to fix her marriage by dating other men? Ethan, ever the more restrained one, cursed under his breath. She's crazy, Dad. William exhaled slowly. I don't know what to do. I need you to know this. I need you to hear this from her. Rachel's voice became firm, her anger giving her strength. We'll figure this out together, Dad. She can't just destroy this family without consequences. Ethan agreed, his tone unusually steady. We're with you, Dad. It was the first time William felt a glimmer of hope that night. His children were his anchors, and with their support he knew he could face whatever came next. The next morning, William woke up with a sense of clarity he hadn't felt in months. His thoughts were no longer clouded by confusion and despair, but were replaced by a steely determination. Sophia's betrayal isn't just hurtful to him. It's an attack on the family they've built together, and William isn't about to let her get away with it all. He poured himself a cup of black coffee and sat at the kitchen table, cell phone in hand. At the top of his recent call log is the name, Jennifer Moore. She is one of the top divorce lawyers in town, known for her aggressive tactics and sharp mind. William met her years ago through a mutual friend, but never imagined he would one day need her services. Jennifer, this is William Lawson, he said when she picked up the phone. I need your help. Jennifer didn't ask too many questions over the phone and simply set up a meeting for later that day, her tone professional and efficient. Bring all the information, she suggested. The more information, the better. That afternoon, William met Jennifer at her office downtown. It's a sleek, modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Jennifer, a well-mannered woman in her early 40s, greeted him with a firm handshake. Let's get to work, she said, gesturing for William to sit down. William pulls out all the materials he's prepared. A recording of Sophia's confession, screenshots of text messages recovered from her cell phone, and printouts of emails between her and a man named James. This information unquestionably reveals the nature of their relationship. Jennifer scrutinized the materials with a professional eye, taking notes from time to time. When she finally looked up, her expression was serious. These are solid pieces of evidence, she said, clear confirmation of adultery, which will work very much in your favor in the divorce proceedings. We can argue for a larger percentage of the division of marital property on that basis, and with the support of your children, we can build a stronger case. William nodded, his jaw tightening. I hope she feels the consequences of her actions. Jennifer, she didn't just betray me, she betrayed her entire family. An approving smile appeared at the corner of Jennifer's mouth. We'll make sure she gets it. Over the next hour, they worked out a detailed strategy, with Jennifer advising him on how and when to file divorce papers with Sophia. They agree that delivering it while she's on a date with James is the best time, and that a public setting would amplify the stigma and ensure that Sophia feels the full cost of her choices. In the days leading up to Friday, William, Rachel, and Ethan move in perfect harmony, their shared anger and determination driving everything forward. They began packing Sophia's belongings, carefully boxing up her clothes, personal effects, and anything that would remind them that she had been there. Rachel showed particular ruthlessness, her movements sharp and determined. She doesn't deserve to be here, she cooed as she shoved Sophia's pair of designer shoes into a box. This home is ours, not hers. Ethan is quieter, but just as determined. He made trip after trip to carry the boxes to the car, the expression on his face always grim. She made a choice, he said simply, and now she has to take responsibility for it. By Friday morning, the house had been emptied of almost everything that belonged to Sophia. William has arranged for a storage unit near her parents' house where everything will be delivered. The door locks have been replaced and the whole house feels different, as if the burden of betrayal has finally been lifted. William stood in the living room, taking in the peace. It's tonight, he said, his voice firm. Everything will change. Sophia arrives at the fine dining restaurant wearing a dazzling red dress and her hair perfectly styled. She exudes confidence, like a woman ready to embrace her new life. James greeted her with a smile and pulled out her chair for her as they prepared to spend an indulgent evening together. The dining room is softly lit with an intimate and romantic atmosphere. Sophia felt a thrill surge through her body, a mixture of excitement and provocation. For the first time in years, she felt desired, felt so alive. Their conversation flowed naturally, interspersed with occasional laughs and knowing glances. Sophia sips her wine, soaking in the beauty of the moment. Suddenly, a familiar figure appeared at their table. "Mom!" Rachel's voice was cold and sharp, and her eyes burned with enough anger to light up the room. Sophia's smile froze and her face turned pale for an instant. "Rachel, what are you doing here?" Rachel completely ignored James, her eyes firmly locked on her mother. "I'd ask you the same question," she said, "dating here while Dad's at home cleaning up the mess you've ruined your life." Sophia opened her mouth to respond, but Rachel didn't give her that chance. "How could you do this to him? To us?" The confrontation attracted the attention of the surrounding diners, and whispers began to spread through the restaurant as people turned their heads to watch the unfolding drama. Sophia's voice turned into a strained whisper, "Rachel, please, not here like this." But Rachel wasn't done yet. "You didn't think about that when you were humiliating Dad, so why should I care about your embarrassment?" Just then, a man in a suit approached the table, holding a thick envelope. "Is this Ms. Sophia Lawson, please?" His voice was loud enough to be heard all around him. Sophia's hands were shaking as she took the envelope. "Yes, it's me. Here are the legal papers for your divorce," the man said solemnly, placing them in her hands. A breathless silence fell over the entire restaurant. Sophia sat frozen, staring in shock at the divorce papers in her hands. James stirred uneasily, muttered an excuse and hurried away from the table. Rachel leaned forward, her voice low and menacing. "You brought this on yourself?" With that, she turned and left the restaurant, leaving Sophia alone with humiliation on all sides. The whispers became louder, judgmental stares from every corner weighing her down. Later that day, Sophia returned home to find that her key had failed and she was unable to unlock the door. She pounded frantically on the door, her desperation growing as the minutes ticked by. "William!" she cried, her voice breaking with sobs. "Let me in." Her cell phone vibrated in her hand. It was William calling. "Sophia," he said, his tone cold and detached. "There's a letter in the envelope. Read it. Everything you need to know is there." The phone hung up. Sophia tore open the envelope with trembling hands and took out the letter. William's words were direct and unfeeling. "Sophia, you made your choice and now I have made mine. You have been served with divorce papers on the grounds of adultery. All of your belongings have been moved to a storage unit with the key and address attached. Our children are on my side. Do not contact me except through my attorney. This is the consequence of your behavior, and you need to learn to live with it." "William." Sophia sat paralyzed on the floor, the consequences of the decisions she had made finally crushing her completely. The life she had taken for granted that she would always have was gone, and she had no one to blame but herself. Sophia sat on the cold sidewalk, William's letter lying heavily in her lap. Those simple words were a brutal reminder of the irreparable damage she had caused. She'd gambled everything: her marriage, her family, her home, and now she'd lost it all. She hastily wiped away her tears and shakily took out her cell phone to dial Rachel's number. The phone rang once, twice, then went to voicemail. Sophia swallowed the hard lump in her throat and tried calling Ethan again. Same result. Both her children shut her out. She sighed deeply and stared out the darkened windows of the house that had once been her haven. With no other option, she gathered herself up and drove to the storage unit William had mentioned. The long night walk through the empty, silent streets gave her too much time to think back on the choices that had brought her to this point. The storage unit is a cold and impersonal space. Sophia opened the door with the small key William had enclosed and found herself surrounded by boxes neatly labeled with her name. It's physical proof of her expulsion. Everything she once shared with William is now neatly categorized and purged from the life they built together. She sat there for hours, rummaging through the wreckage of her old life. Photographs, mementos, clothes, each item a painful reminder of what she had lost. When she finally leaves, dawn has broken, and Sophia feels like only a shadow of the woman she once was. When Monday morning came, with a heavy sense of dread, Sophia walked into the office. She kept her head down, hoping to avoid the curious stares of her coworkers. But the whispers follow like a shadow. The video of the confrontation at the restaurant that day has gone viral. A diner recorded the entire scene and posted it on social media, and the video quickly went viral. The comments were unforgiving, with strangers condemning her behavior, calling her selfish and unfaithful. Later in the morning, her boss called her into his office with a serious expression. "Sophia," he spoke, disappointment in his tone, "I'm sure you've seen the video that's been circulating online." She nodded, her throat too tight to speak. "This negative publicity is damaging not only to you personally, but to our company as well. Effective immediately, we have decided to place you on indefinite leave of absence." Sophia felt the ground shake beneath her feet. She expected to be blamed by her family and friends, but the blow to her career was something she didn't foresee. She left the office with her head down as the realities of her new life began to weigh heavily on her. Loneliness, unemployment, and social scorn. As the weeks passed, Sophia's isolation deepened. Her attempts to contact James were met with indifference. After that public farce at the restaurant, he quickly disassociates himself from her and wants nothing to do with the scandal. His last message to her was short and decisive. "It's time for us to move on." Sophia tries to rebuild some kind of life in her tiny apartment, but without her family, her job, or even James, the days turn into a blurry nothingness. She spends her nights looking through old family photos, each one a painful reminder of all she has lost. The loneliness is unbearable. She thought about calling William and pleading for forgiveness, but she knew it would be futile. His letter had made it clear that there was no turning back. The children's silence is equally painful, realizing that their choice to side with William is a wound that will never heal. One night, after another failed attempt to reach Rachel, Sophia finds herself swiping through social media. She stumbled across one of William's posts. It was a picture of him with Rachel and Ethan at a family dinner. They were both smiling, with a caption that read, "Stronger together." Sophia stared at the screen, tears running down her cheeks. The family she once took for granted has flourished without her, and she has nothing but regret. In the darkness, Sophia begins to face the harsh truths that she has avoided for years. She spent a long time ignoring her unhappiness, believing that getting out of her marriage would lead to answers. But the choices she made were selfish and short-sighted, and ultimately cost her everything. Determined to find some kind of redemption, Sophia begins psychotherapy. Each counseling session was a painful experience that forced her to confront the root of her dissatisfaction. She talks about her marriage, her extramarital affairs, and the deep-seated insecurities that drive her to seek the approval of others. Slowly, she began to piece her shattered life back together. She joined the local community center to volunteer her time to help others. It was a small step forward, but it gave her a sense of being. Sophia also begins to focus on repairing her relationship with Rachel and Ethan by writing to them, admitting her mistakes while not expecting forgiveness. At first, there was no response, but over time, Rachel began to reply to her, initially very cautiously, then increasingly openly. Their conversation is full of unresolved pain, but it marks the beginning of a fragile reconnection. Months turned into a year as Sophia's life gradually stabilized. She finds a new job that is very different from her previous career, but has its own significance. Relationships with her children are still being repaired, but she cherishes every interaction, no matter how small. William, on the other hand, has fully embraced his new life. His bond with Rachel and Ethan grows even stronger, and he even starts dating. While the pain of Sophia's betrayal remains, it no longer defines him. He rebuilt his life and he's happy. One day, Sophia receives a letter from William. The letter was brief, but sincere, acknowledging her efforts to make amends and wishing her well. It's not forgiveness, but some sort of relief. Sophia carefully folded the letter and held it against her chest. For the first time in a long time, she felt calm. Her journey is far from over, but she is finally on the path to healing. In those silent moments, as she sits alone on the balcony of her new apartment, staring out at the city lights, Sophia begins to understand that true self-discovery comes not from running away or seeking external validation, but from facing one's own truths, accepting the mistakes of the past, and having the courage to move on. She keeps that last letter from William, not as an obsession with the past, but as a reminder that sometimes the greatest growth comes from the deepest hurt. She remembers this every morning as she prepares for a new day. She may never be able to fully repair the damage she's done, but she has learned to live with remorse and find the strength to move on from it. On weekend afternoons, she often taught young people at the community center. Looking at their faces, she remembered the impulsiveness and uncertainty of her youth. She began to understand that the most important thing in life is not to strive for perfection, but to have the courage to admit and correct mistakes when they are made. Sometimes, when she stumbles across William and the kids on the street, she nods politely in greeting and goes on her way. This encounter is no longer as agonizing as it was at first, but carries with it a calm acceptance. She knew that some things, once broken, could not be fully repaired, but the broken edges could be made gentle. During this rebuilding process, Sophia found herself becoming more compassionate and understanding of others' struggles. Her experience, as painful as it was, taught her a valuable lesson. True happiness does not lie in escaping the constraints of reality, but in finding her true self in her existing relationships. When spring came, Sophia planted some flowers on the windowsill of her apartment. Watching them break out of the soil and bloom in the sun, she thought of her own rebirth. The pain, the regret, the loss, all of these become nourishment for a new life. While she can never regain everything she lost, she is learning to find meaning and purpose in her new reality. Sophia almost cried tears of joy when Rachel offered to invite her to lunch for the first time. Though the conversation remained cautious, that deep connection between mother and daughter began to slowly heal. It gave her hope and made her believe that even the deepest wounds could heal with time. Late at night, Sophia often ponders the lessons life has taught her. She learned that true freedom comes not from breaking commitments, but from finding room for self-growth in them. She lost a lot, but she also gained a profound wisdom. Sometimes we have to be completely lost to truly find ourselves. That's the end of today's story. For more captivating tales, hit subscribe and never miss an episode.